Thank you, guys. Well, thank you to our Expresso viewers. Nearly 60,000 likes on Facebook. That is awesome. And I hope we're going to put that collective intellectual might into action today as we discuss, I think, one of the biggest issues facing sport, not just South African athletes, but all athletes at large. Why, of course, Lance Armstrong has brought it to the fore, doping in sport. His big interview with Oprah has sent shockwaves across the world, but I think those inside sport have seen this brewing for a long time. None more so than South African cyclist David George. Thank you so much for joining us. And Khalid, Galant, the CEO of the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'm sure this has been quite a big week for you. Lots of the plans that you guys have been putting into practice, I think, take new impetus this week with the revelations. I'm going to pose just one question to you both quickly, and my first has to be to you, David. You chose to put yourself at great risk making the kind of statements that you did at the end of last year. You've opened yourself up. You have admitted to yourself falling. Why then? Why the timing? Why was it so important for you to stand up and face your own reckoning?
I mean, I think it's incredibly important that moving forward we learn from my experience. You know, I've got a story to tell, and I think it's incredibly important that we tell that story, because without that, if I just run away and hide from it and pretend like it hasn't happened, no one's going to learn. So for me, it was important to come forward and to speak to Khalid and just give them a window into the athlete soul, because I don't think it gets done often enough. You know, I don't think athletes come forward and say, right, this didn't really sit with me. I did it, but it didn't sit with me, and you know, this is why. And I think that's an incredibly important process that needs to take place, and I think Khalid will agree with me on that.
Now, Khalid, I'm going to get your perspective on just how widespread this issue is, because by the sounds of things, it is touching almost every level of sport, certainly here in South Africa. But we spoke to the sports minister, Fikile Mbalula, about this problem because of the level that it has now reached in South Africa. And he had some pretty important words, but also some shocking words. Let's take a look.
Minister, doping in sports in South Africa has become a very serious issue. Can you tell us about the Anti-Doping Board of South Africa and some of its newly elected members?
We've got a new board which is quite efficient, chaired by Dr. Victor Matesele. Our board is quite effective. South Africa, in terms of anti-doping, is actually a leading country. We are pleased that in this country, we've got the best laboratories which assist the rest of Africa with the samples and to look at those cheating athletes and so on. Our biggest challenge is in the schools, where in which we find that young people take steroids, kits and so on. We're looking at the possibility of amending the law in order to give us the powers to intervene and do testing, to do away with cheaters at that particular level.
As former president of the ANC Youth League, I can imagine that youth issues are quite important to you. What kind of anti-doping educational campaigns do you have in place for the youth?
It's a whole question of awareness. You remember that last year, Cape Augusto, I was actually doing the cycling. We ran a big campaign in the rugby matches, in soccer matches, that I don't know to doping, not to cheating and all of that in sports, because some of the substances that are basically used, athletes are not exposed to some of the substances that are not wanted when it comes to competing, etc. So we've got a task to educate.
There's a very interesting campaign running, I Play Fair, Say No to Doping. Can you tell us a little about it and some of the celebrities involved? As
part and parcel of I Play Fair and No to Doping campaign, there are a number of celebrities within rugby, players themselves, who were actually promoting the campaign, not only rugby, including football and so on, and cricket, and promoting the campaign. As we go forward, and in the year in which we'll be hosting WADA conference in South Africa, part of the build-up events is going to be the involvement of different celebrities in sports, to highlight the dangers of doping in sport.
Another celebrity who's involved directly with anti-doping campaigns is Natalie du Toit. What kind of impact are you hoping she will have as a role model?
She's part of the board, and I think Natalie du Toit represents everything about excellence. And she was never a cheat, very courageous and a determined young woman. She's one person who must tell the story not from a point of being fake, but the person who lived the life of being an athlete out and out. I think there could have never been a better choice.
Minister, the World Conference on Doping in Sports is going to be hosted in South Africa in November, the first on African soil. What are some of its objectives?
Well, the objective is a conference in which it will evaluate its work, among others. It will perfect its rules with regard to doping and the challenges that we faced in the modern world. Armstrong, a great hero, but yet a cheat at the end. So that tells a story that you can run, but you can't hide. And if you listen to that story and what actually went through that particular process, including their methods of cheating, it means that we've got to up the game to be in a position to detect these cheaters in whatever way they actually manifest themselves.
Minister, what hopes and dreams do you have for the future of South African sport with regard to anti-doping?
One is to basically raise awareness. Two, is important to strengthen legislation. And then three, it's important to perfect the methods to detect the undetectable cheater out there who's doing actually doping. Awareness will help us to basically highlight things that an ordinary athlete will not actually be exposed to.
Thank you so much for your time and for all the great work that you're doing to combat doping in sports in South Africa.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us.
Fantastic, and we thank the Minister of Sport, Fikile Mbalula, for giving us his take on what is a very widespread problem. But Khalid, it sounds like something that your institute and the South African sporting bodies as a whole are now very firmly focused on, and not just at the professional level, but right down at the school level, where sadly, I think there is very little governance and a lot of responsibility is put on the school child to take care of their own progression, as opposed to having those managers to look after them. Where do we sit in the fight against anti-doping here in South Africa?
Yeah, from our end, we've had to really reevaluate our strategies and how we go forward. It's almost been a paradigm shift. We focused a lot on elite sport and the top sport. As you say, basically almost ignoring the school level, and that's where the growing problems started and started mushrooming from there. So we are addressing it, we have to address it. And testing is one part of the solution, but we also have to look at values the students, the athletes, the culture and the values and culture that coaches, parents and teachers impart to the players. This obsession with just being big, you know, size, and no emphasis on real skill and the spirit of competition, the spirit of sport, the healthiness or well-being of competing in sport.
In a country that is filled with such insanely good athletes, why? David, for you, why?
I mean, just to reiterate on what Khalid was saying, I mean, for me, the most important thing is the mentorship that you get. You know, we've got such great leaders in business and in society in South Africa that leadership doesn't filter through to the kids and to, you know, it should filter through to the athletes. So I think mentorship is a key component to stopping it. You know, why? Because, you know, athletes are always driven to win at all costs. You know, we're blinded by our own ambition. You know, type A personalities that's just about winning, you know, and the sort of rationalizing out of the doping, you know, you rationalize it out in your mind so that to the point where, you know, it just becomes, you know, part of the process, which I think, you know, is the start of the problem.
How prevalent is it for it to be a logical next step in our top athletes' progression, for you yourself to see this as something that is an option available? You know, how prevalent must it be then that this is something that's there, that a choice that's that easy to make?
So look, anywhere there's no testing or the testing is limited, it's endemic. You know, I think we need to be, you know, kind of upfront about it and not naive. You know, if you're not going to test, and if you're not going to test regularly, it's going to become a problem. If it's not already, it's going to become a problem. So it's, you know, in my experience, it's prevalent. Then you look at how the spotlight has been shone on cycling in terms of the media in Europe and in terms of the testing procedures that get done. I mean, the testing procedures are so thorough now that it's actually going the other way.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in Europe. So the professional scene in Europe, the blood testing and the urine testing is so thorough now that there has been a shift recently. But that's only because of the testing. If you're not doing the sort of industry standard, consistent testing, which costs money.
This is my next thing. This is infrastructure. This requires a massive shift, and we're going to continue talking about how South Africa is now fighting that battle, and what we can offer young athletes and young managers of athletes and sportsmen, what tools are available to them to make that shift. Gentlemen, stick around. We're going to get into this this matter a little bit more in depth. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Clearly, this is something that all of us need to have front of radar. Right, we're going to continue our discussion on anti-doping, what it means to you at home. We'd love to know. Send us your messages on our Facebook page or tweet us at Expresso Show. We'd love to hear what you think about this issue that ultimately affects all levels of sport abroad and here in South Africa. We're going to take a quick break. We'll continue after that.